Imagine this. You're playing a game in a sport of your choosing. Everything is going pretty well when all of a sudden you're hit to the ground and you hear a snap in your arm. Afterwards, you head to the emergency room and find out you've broken your ulna. But that's not the worst of it. The doctor tells you you'll have to be in a cast for roughly 8 to 12 weeks, maybe 6 if you're lucky, aka the rest of the season. And you're angry about it. You're looking for someone, anyone to blame. Then you realize, if only the sports league had done more to protect you, then you wouldn't be in this situation. It's their fault, but maybe you should take a step back and reevaluate the situation, disregarding any personal frustrations you may be having. All too often, sports leagues are the thing to blame when something goes wrong. It's always a problem with them. Their rules, their referees, their safety equipment. But oddly enough, it's never the players' fault. You know, the ones who are out on the field, willingly and knowingly partaking in a dangerous sport with sign liability to a sports league that, at the end of the day, can only do so much. These athletic organizations always seem to be the root of everyone's problems, when, in reality, they already do as much as they can to help players. Sports leagues shouldn't have to do more to prevent concussions and other sports injuries for a multitude of reasons. From not being able to stop every possible negative outcome, to already having signed waivers and consent forms, to athletes willingly participating after knowing the risks, sports leagues shouldn't be the ones held accountable for every little thing that happens on the field. Before deciding to join a sport, you have to think about it. The time, the commitment, and especially the dangers. It's no secret that playing a sport has some level of risk to it. Whether it be concussions, broken bones, sprained joints, or even getting run over by a Zamboni on the ice. So why is it that people constantly seem surprised when injuries occur while playing sports? That's almost like going to a concert and getting angry when people start singing along off key. Both are inevitable and have a high chance of happening, and there's no real guarantee of preventing them, no matter how hard you try. That's why they have things such as waivers and consent forms, in which sports leagues warn individuals of the potential risks of participating in the sport, and ensuring that the participant understands that the league is doing whatever it can to prevent these risks. At Bacon Academy, they don't just have a waiver. They have an entire handbook dedicated to student athletes. 17 whole pages typed out by our dear Mr. Burke, covering any and all issues that may occur during the sports season. Regarding sports injuries, it states specifically, and I quote, "The participation in interscholastic sports involves an inherent risk of injury, which may include severe injuries possibly involving paralysis, permanent mental disability, or death, and these injuries may occur in some instances as a result of an unavoidable accident," end quote. If that doesn't sound like a warning, then I don't know what will. And if someone is still willing to participate in a sport after reading that playing Omnican ball may lead to death, then obviously they're well aware of the potential risks. So even once they've signed saying they will not hold the sports league liable for any injuries, why does it still seem to be the responsibility of the sports league whenever someone's injured? Think of it like a roller coaster. You see the sign out front saying something along the lines of "may cause death," and you're well aware of people having flown off the ride in the past. So why would the amusement park be the one facing legal consequences when you willingly rode the ride, knowing there was a risk? And after you quite literally, knowingly sign your life away, you have to learn the rules. The rules that have been set in stone for years upon years since the existence of the sport itself. The rules that a lot of people blame when it comes to finding a cause to sports injuries. But to that I ask, what are the sports leagues expected to do? Change the rules that makes the sport what it is? Make it so that the NFL is now two-hand touch as opposed to tackle? Have them use those foam dodgeballs from gym class in baseball? The majority of sports leagues have already done everything they can to ensure that athletes are as safe as possible, but that still doesn't seem to be enough. In an article with the Huffington Post, Dr. James Trebone, a professor of sports medicine, stated that, quote, "It is hard to prevent concussions completely, but you can teach your athletes how to tackle correctly and not to lead with their head," end quote. So, in reality, it's the fault of the coaches and the athletes themselves. Sports leagues can't stop athletes from performing such minute details in order to help them play the sport the safest way possible. And even then, you'll still have people getting injured, because a large percentage of sports injuries don't actually occur during games. They happen during practices, both official and personal practice time. While getting in practice is a good thing, getting in too much practice doesn't necessarily have the same benefits. Caria Rio wrote an article regarding student athletes overusing their muscles in order to practice, and the many problems the extra strain can have on their bodies. Thomas Bediglieri, a pediatric sports medicine specialist, stated that, quote, "I think we're doing a pretty good job of elucidating the concept of rest being part of practice, and that too much of a good thing can start to be a bad thing," end quote. Of course, no matter how hard they try to warn athletes, sports organizations can only do so much. They can't regulate the amount of time they spend practicing, and this overuse is the catalyst for most injuries and end up occurring throughout the season, even if the breaking point, pun intended, happened during a game. At the end of the day, being an athlete is difficult, but being a sports organization is arguably more difficult. You're constantly being seen as responsible for the well-being of athletes when, in reality, there's little more you can do. Even after the additional rules, the warnings, the waivers, there are some things that are simply unavoidable, and injuries are one of them. Athletes are already well aware of the risks, have signed liability waivers, have complied to the rules made specifically to prevent injuries, and have been warned on how to prevent these injuries themselves, but that still doesn't seem to be enough. Athletic organizations shouldn't have to do more to prevent concussions and other sports injuries. Rather, we as individuals should learn to take responsibility for ourselves and our bodies. Thank you.